Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to get into a huge paradox at the very heart of fitness, how the drive to get stronger can actually be the very thing that makes you weaker. We are diving deep into the science of athletic recovery.
You've heard it a million times, right? It's the mantra that's been drilled into us. But what if that whole philosophy is actually holding you back? We're going to explore that super fine line between hitting your peak and just hitting a brick wall.
So push too far for too long, and this is where you end up. Overtraining syndrome, or OTS. And listen, this isn't just feeling a little tired. This is a deep physiological fatigue that can sideline up to 60% of elite athletes. It's basically your body pulling the emergency brake when that no pain, no gain idea goes way off the rails.
So this brings us to a really fascinating paradox, doesn't it? The very training that's supposed to build you up can actually be the thing that breaks you down if you're not careful. But how does this actually happen on a biological level?
Well, it all comes down to this really critical system in your body called the HPA axis. Now, don't worry about the long name. Just think of it like this. It's the central command for your entire stress response. Every time you train, you're applying stress, and the HPA axis is what fires up to help you adapt and, hopefully, grow stronger.
So what does this engine look like when it's really humming, when it's running at peak performance? What really separates an elite athlete? Well, the secret isn't just in their muscles. It's all about how their stress engine has been conditioned over time.
A really groundbreaking study actually uncovered this biological secret. They called it hormonal conditioning. And it turns out, healthy athletes don't just have stronger muscles. Their entire hormonal stress response is, well, it's just stronger. Their HPA axis becomes super efficient, and it creates a bigger, better response that really drives that elite-level performance.
And check this out. This graph shows you exactly what that looks like in the real world. During a stress test, look at the cortisol response for the healthy athletes. It's way higher than both the overtrained athletes and even the non-active folks. That massive spike, that is their competitive edge, and you can see it right there in the data. But what happens when that finely tuned engine starts to sputter and eventually stalls? This is where we get into the biology of burnout, of overtraining syndrome.
And the contrast is just stark. In an overtrained athlete, that hormonal advantage is completely gone. Their HPA axis response becomes blunted, sluggish, inefficient. They've essentially lost their biological superpower. In fact, their stress response starts to look a lot more like someone who doesn't even train.
You know, the researchers themselves didn't pull any punches. They called it a deconditioning process. It's like the athlete is literally losing that elite hormonal edge they worked so hard for. The engine has been run into the ground. Simple as that.
So here's the bottom line, the thing you really need to get. This isn't just about feeling tired. A blunted HPA axis is the core physiological reason for the drop in performance and that deep, crushing fatigue that comes with OTS. Your body's stress management system has basically run out of gas. Okay, so we understand the problem. Now, how do we fix it? How do we avoid it? The good news is, science also gives us a really clear framework for managing recovery and keeping that engine running nice and smooth.
Think of your training program like a machine with three main control levers. A huge review of resistance training science points to these as the key variables you can adjust. And honestly, learning how to pull these levers is the difference between making consistent progress and just getting stuck in a cycle of burnout.
First up, how close you get to failure. And the research here is crystal clear. You do not have to grind out that last ugly rep to get bigger or stronger. In fact, going to failure all the time dramatically increases fatigue and systemic stress. The much smarter move? Stop a rep or two short. You get almost all of the benefits with just a fraction of the recovery cost.
Okay, the second lever is training volume. It's pretty simple. More sets equals more fatigue. But the real killer, the thing you have to watch out for, is the combination of high volume and training to failure. That is the fast track to burnout. A much better place to start for most people is around 10 hard sets per muscle group per week, and you only add more if you can prove you're actually recovering from it. And finally, exercise selection. Come on, not all lifts are created equal, right? A heavy, full-body movement like a barbell squat creates way more stress on your entire system than an isolation movement like a bicep curl. This doesn't mean you avoid big, compound lifts, of course not, but you have to be really strategic about where you place them in your week to give yourself enough time to recover.
All right, so we've got our three levers. How do we pull them in the right sequence to build a smarter, more sustainable training week? You know, one that expertly balances that stress and recovery. So here's a really common approach you see all the time. A heavy hypertrophy day, then just 2 days later, another heavy strength day. The problem is you're stacking 2 really demanding sessions pretty close together. That means you might still be fatigued from day 1 when you're trying to perform on day 3. It's not ideal.
Now, here's a much smarter approach. It's often called daily undulating periodization, or DUP, and it basically flips this on its head. By putting a lighter, low-fatigue power day between the 2 hard days, you create this amazing little recovery buffer. This simple change lets the fatigue drop off, so you can attack that second heavy day fresh and strong. And that leads to way better long-term gains.
And that easy day in the middle doesn't mean you have to just sit on the couch. Things like active recovery, so light cardio, maybe some technique work, can actually speed up the process by improving blood flow and helping your muscles repair. It's all about recovering smarter, not just resting longer.
Okay, let's bring this all home. If no pain, no gain is the old, broken way of thinking, what's the new mantra that we should all be following?
So let's recap the big stuff. 1. Elite performance is driven by that powerful, conditioned hormonal response. 2. Overtraining completely reverses that process. 3. Recovery is not passive. You're in control with those 3 levers of proximity to failure, volume, and exercise choice. And finally, you put it all together by structuring your week intelligently.
And this brings us to what I think is the most important mindset shift of all. The goal isn't just to be the athlete who can apply the most stress. The goal is to be the athlete who has mastered recovering from that stress. That right there is the real secret to unlocking your long-term potential.
And that brings us to our final question for you. Take a hard look at your own program. After everything we've just covered, what is one single adjustment, maybe pulling back from failure, tweaking your volume, or reordering your week, that you can make right now to put recovery back in the driver's seat? Because that's where the real gains truly begin.